Hello YouTube, this is Corrupt Reverend and you are watching my beginner's guide for the new DM of making a D&D adventure. So who am I? Well, I am, I already said it, I'm Corrupt Reverend, and that's about as personal as I get on the internet. But a little bit about myself. How long have I been playing D&D? About a year. Not very long. This is a beginner's guide by a beginner. I got interested in D&D sometime last year after watching Acquisitions Incorporated. I don't know how I came across it, but it seemed like a lot of fun and I wanted to try it. So I got my friends together and, like it often happens, I, I, I discovered that this was a thing that I had to make happen myself. So I got the starter kit and got my friends together and we started playing it. I think we got like 3 sessions into that, but that particular group of players, we have a hard time getting everyone together, so that's kind of on the back burner right now. But I have had smaller groups together since then, and we've done a couple one-shots, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and I want to keep doing it. So, after doing the one-shots, I decided that it was something I think that I could do. You know, I felt that it wasn't outside the realm of possibilities for me to create one of these things, right? And I'm hoping to show you that that's completely correct. Like, you can sit down tonight and start making a D&D adventure yourself. It seems kind of intimidating just at first glance, but it's really, really simple and really fun just on its own. I haven't even run anybody through any of this yet because I'm not finished. I would have liked to start this video series. I think it's going to be a series because I don't think I'm going to go through the whole process in one video. That would be insane. But I wanted to make this series like just following the entire process from start to finish. Unfortunately, I came up with this idea for these videos tonight, and I've already been working on this for a little bit, but I'm not too far along, and I remember, you know, the process that got me to where I am now. So this video is just mostly going to be recap and exposing you to some tools that I find very helpful. So, getting started, some resources. You're interested in playing D&D, or you already have been playing D&D, but you want to start DMing, or you've been DMing and you want to start creating your first adventure. Where do you start? Well, if you've already been playing, you should already have some of this. If this is completely new to you, it seems like something fun, and you're going to try and wrangle your friends into it, you're going to need the core rules. You can either get the basic rule set for free off of Wizard of the Coast's website. Totally fine to do that. Last time I looked at them, they left some stuff out, but it's enough to get you started. It's basically about what is included, about the same amount that's included with the starter set. The starter set doesn't come with a full rule book. It just comes with like a basic rule set that will let you play the game. And that's perfectly fine for just starting out and getting a feel if it's something that you want to spend money on, because the core books, I think on Amazon they're about $30 a pop, and there's 3 books. There's the Player's Handbook, which you'll need. There's the Dungeon Master's Guide, which you'll need. And then there's the Monster Manual, which it's really freaking handy to have. You can get by without it, but it's nice to have that source to reference, especially when you're writing your own adventure. So, number 1 source right there is the actual Wizards of the Coast material. Invaluable. Number 2, get on Reddit. get your ass on Reddit and search D&D. There are a ton of subreddits dedicated to D&D. Unfortunately, I was going to show you this, but currently Reddit is down. I cannot show you. So, yeah. So, well, just take my word for it. There are a lot on there. There's the DM Academy that is super helpful for DMs starting out. I've been using it a lot. There's just straight up D&D subreddit. There's 5th edition specific subreddits. There's ones specifically for DMs posting their own homebrew stuff. That's super handy to have. Look at what other people are doing. So yeah, Reddit, another great source of information. There's the Wizards of the Coast DMs Guild. I haven't really poked around too much on there, but there's supposed to be quite a bit of good information and sort of homebrew type stuff there. And then YouTube, of course. YouTube, there's lots of videos on playing the game, running the game, and even creating campaigns and adventures and settings and stuff like that. The reason I'm making this video is I think it would be helpful for some people. It would have been helpful for me to see not only someone that's new to it working it out, but also just a different approach. So far, my approach actually kind of follows Matt Colville's sort of approach to building a setting and adventure. That's not intentional. He started making videos after I already started on this, and I gotta say, that guy's brilliant. He does stuff the same way me. Same way. I are good with words and stuff. No, he creates things, I think, in generally the same sort of way that I do. So if you find this video helpful, he has a video series. I can't remember what it's called. He creates a setting and adventure called Calabris is the name of the setting, I believe, and it's basically just videos of him creating adventure based on input from his Twitch viewers. Really fun to watch. Very entertaining guy too. But there's him and the big hitters, Chris Perkins and Matt Mercer. They both have stuff on content creation. Don Forged Cast, he has good stuff. Just search D&D campaign building on YouTube and you'll find quite a few people that are doing just that and showing you how they do it. So those are your main resources that you want to have in your back pocket, because you can lock yourself in a lead room and try and do it all completely uninfluenced by outside sources. But why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself? So many people have had such amazing ideas since the beginning of time. You got to draw off of that. You got to look at what is already there and think, you know what, that's a good idea. There's nothing wrong with that. That I encourage that fully. And not just D&D stuff. You can look at classic myths and folklore and draw inspiration from that. So you've got your resources, you've got your books, you've got your websites, you've got your YouTube personalities. Now what? What are you going to do? What's the first step in creating an adventure? According to Corrupt Reverend, I say the first step is making a map. So here I made a map, but I'm not using this map. I'm using that map. This map I actually created just practicing drawing maps, because I'm not like an artistic person. I'm not a writer. I'm not a drawer person type artist. a visual artist. So I had to kind of teach myself how to draw maps, and I do all my maps with in the physical. I do pen and paper map making, just because that's how I work. I don't like drawing stuff on computers. So you can draw stuff on computers. You can use GIMP, and there's great tutorials on YouTube on how to make maps using GIMP or Photoshop or anything like that. And there's purpose-built programs for making D&D maps, like Campaign Cartographer and things like that. Those are more like hex-based and like classic D&D type maps with just kind of bland iconography. But if that's what you want to do, you can do that just fine. Because a map, it doesn't have to be artistic. It can be just scribbles on the back of a cocktail napkin. It doesn't really matter. It's just a reference, and you can run your game without your players ever seeing it, as long as you have a reference for yourself, so you know like which direction they're headed and how far it is to get from one place to another. And that's all you need. So it doesn't have to be fancy. Just draw yourself a map. I'm not going to really get into drawing maps in this video. And I use the term video loosely because really this is almost like a slideshow. Like, I'm trying to remember to wiggle my cursor just so that there's something happening on screen. I'm going to look into setting up a camera so you can have a face talking at you at least. Because this, I don't know, this kind of seems a little bit boring to me. But let's call it a podcast, a video podcast. Yeah, that works. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the making of maps. I might make another video about making maps, but there are already so many great videos about making maps on YouTube. Number one source that I would point you to for making maps would be WASD20. He's also on Reddit. He goes by the username LankyMage. I can't remember his name. I don't know if he publicly says his name at all. Anyway, whoever he is, he's a great artist, and he has really great tutorials on drawing maps. So if you're stuck at drawing a map, look it up. Look up WASD20. You just Google how to draw a fantasy map, and you'll find some answers. There are websites specifically for fantasy cartography. There's a subreddit for map makers called Map Makers, and there's lots of great resources there. So once you've figured out how to draw a map, and you've drawn a map, that is where I say you start. You start with a map. You don't need any stories. You just need a landmass. That's like the very basis, literally the foundation of your adventure is your map. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be pretty, just some sort of map. That's how my brain works. That's how I've been doing this. Started with a map. Like I said, this was just a practice map that I ended up liking. This was the map I was going to use, but it's too big. And for that reason, I really suggest starting with an island, because it's self-contained. It's not as intimidating. You can change the scale to be however big or small you want. This could be, I could upscale this to be the size of Australia, and it would still work. It would be kind of a massive crater, but I could make that work with the story, But you're not worried about the story right now. You're just worried about the map. And I am saying it's a good idea to start with an island. I got the idea of the island because I'm running I'm almost done running one shot that takes place on an island, and I really like how compact it is and how it's. I feel like it makes it easier for a starting DM because it helps contain your players. With a map, with a continent, that's huge. Without railroading your players, there's no containing them. Like, I would want them to stay in this little town right here. Oh no. Screw you, corrupt reverend. We're going to steal a ship, and we're going to sail over around here where there is no map, and then go up above. Okay. And then you got to wing it all and Some people love that. Some DMs loved winging it like that. I'm not there yet. And I think most DMs are not there, even if they think they are. So, for that reason, I say stay away from continents, big land masses. For your first time, make yourself a nice island. So, you got your map. No story, just a map. I made an island with a crater. Why is there a crater? I don't know, I'm not there yet. Who cares? First thing I need to do is put people on this. So, what do? I need to think of two main things. I need to think of who they are, and I need to think of how they got there. Those are the biggies. Who they are / what they are, because this is D&D. They could be any number of races. And why they're on that island. I mean, it's an island, right? With a larger landmass, you could hand wave how they got there just by slow migration, right? With an island, you kind of have to try to end up on an island. You can't accidentally be walking across a plane and oops, I'm on an island. You have to build a ship, unless you want to go the route of there was a land bridge or some deity dropped them there or something, but that's not really what I was going for. There has to be people there, and there has to be a reason they're there. So, as I'm thinking about this, I'm looking at this map, right? And I'm trying to think of these people and how they got there and why they're there. So what do? I open up a notepad document. Just a notepad document, a text document. And I brainstorm. I just type out whatever I think of. So this stuff I ended up changing anyway, but it's just to kind of get you going. So many centuries ago there was a demon. He sucked. He would send his twisted armies of minions to wreak havoc upon the people of the island. The prosperous mines were forced to close, and the creatures laid claim upon the shafts and caverns that the native dwarves once called home. The closure of the mines sent the harbor town of blank, because I don't know what the name of the harbor town is, into Great Depression. Once the finest smiths of the blank sea, because the sea doesn't have a name, but it's not important. You can leave blanks for a long time before you need to go back and think up a name for them. They were now reduced to farmers and woodsmen. Finally, the people of the island sent word across the water in search of a great sorcerer to defeat the evil that had set root in the mountain. Months later, when the last glint of hope was quickly fading, blah blah blah, great wizard blank heard their call and came to the island. Long story short, Wizard Dude killed the demon, but in such a way that the demon exploded, destroying the mountain and embedding an inherent magical potential into the ores and gems of the land. See, this is just crap that I was thinking about while I was looking at this map. Is just kind of organic, just letting stuff come out. So when I first drew this map, I was really concentrating on the crater, on why the crater was there, and that's a lot about what that stuff that I was just reading was about. But it didn't really get into the people or why they're there. I knew I wanted them to be dwarves, right? So I want dwarves on this island. How do dwarves end up on an island? How's that a thing that happens, right? You think of dwarves, you think of giant granite halls hewn straight into the mountainside. Well, maybe I don't want them to be like that in my world. That's fine. My world, most dwarves live above ground. That's how it is. You know why? Because it's my world, and because I say so. So, my island is inhabited by dwarves. Obviously, they got there somehow. How did they get there? By boat. That makes sense. They got there by boat. Then why were they on a boat to begin with? Right? I've already made dwarves not living underground. Am I really going to make them mariners. No, no, I won't go that far. Though some worlds have sea dwarves, and that's cool too. But I wanted my dwarves to still have something to do with like mining and stuff, just not living underground, because that's never really made a lot of sense to me. You gotta farm food and stuff. There's only so many mushrooms you can eat, so in my world, most dwarves live above ground. I just decided, like, on page 1. There are great underground kingdoms, but that's sort of like late stage dwarvism. That's like what they aspire to get to. They a dwarf settlement will form, and they'll start mining, and they'll prosper, or they'll perish if they prosper long enough and make enough wealth, then they eventually carve out these great kingdoms underground. Because aside just from the logistics of living underground, you also have to think about how long it would take to make an entire kingdom underground. And that's part of it for me too. Is it would take a while. So that's how it is in my world. So the dwarves came over on ships. Why were they on ships to begin with? Well, how about their kingdom was taken over or fallen or something? You know, you don't have to fill out everything, especially like when you're just doing history, because there's no internet. At least in my world, there's no strict record keeping. A lot of history has been lost to time. So they don't know what it was that killed their kingdom, why they left where they were. They just know they left. And they eventually ran into this island. Yes, I've got a race, dwarves. I've got them on my island, and I've got the reason of why they're there. That's a big part of the history. You don't need any names or anything. You just need the race, where they are, and like how they got there and / why they're there. So this ancient dwarven kingdom fell, and their people scattered to the wind, and some of them ended up on boats looking for a new home, and they found this island. So they set up shop. Now I need to get a little more modern in the history. That's like the ancient history of the island, right? So I've got this big fat crater in the middle of the island. And when I first drew the map, I was kind of thinking like it'd be cool to do something like the Klamath Native American tribe, their myth for the creation of Crater Lake, which, to paraphrase strictly out of a terrible memory, it was something like there was a god under the mountain, because the natives were there before that crater existed. They were there. They have history of the mountain being there. It wasn't that long ago that volcano blew. Anyway, their myth goes like there was a god under the mountain, and he saw a pretty girl in the tribe that lived next to the mountain, and he wanted to marry her or something, but the god sent an emissary to the tribe to make an offer, and the girl didn't want to go and spend eternity underground, and so she didn't, and shit hit the fan, and I think there was another god involved, and the mountain blew up. That was the original thing I was going to go with, was like there was something under the mountain, some supernatural thing. And that idea kind of like, just that brainstorm, even though I'm not going to use any of that story, it gave me the idea of like this supernatural explosion, right? That caused the crater. So I'm like, well, it'd be really cool if a supernatural explosion caused stuff in what will be the mines to be magical in some way, right? So like a magical explosion would have like magical fallout, that was a cool idea, and that's the only thing that I took from that Klamath mythology tangent was this little nugget of I want magic stuff to be in there. I don't know how it's going to be in there. I just want it to be in there. So at this point, I've got some basic history laid out. I've got my basic notes that are just kind of not a whole lot going on as far as continuity. It's just this is brainstorming. The text document is just brainstorming. Like I get an idea, I write it down, I maybe flesh it out, I decide I don't like it. Okay, whatever. That's all that is. So at this point I'm actually starting to figure out what I do want. So at that point a text document doesn't cut it for me. You can see kind of like in the notes that I had in that text document, it's not very linear. It's really kind of scattered. I try and tidy them up as best I can, but I don't think linearly. I don't think many people think in a linear fashion. You have like a big picture and then you have little tangents that go off of it. And to me it's just tedious to try and organize those on a page in like traditional note-taking. It just doesn't work. So I set out and trying to find something that would work better for me. And the model that I really like is Wikipedia, right? You have embedded links for anything related in a document. So I wanted something like that, and I knew there were programs like that, and I knew there were websites where you could create your own wikis. So eventually I came upon Obsidian Portal, which is a wiki type website specifically for RPGs. And so you create an account and you can have an adventure log for all your sessions. You can have all your characters in there, and you can have the wiki. The wiki is the main thing that I was concerned with because that's just kind of like my organizational method. So I use this for a little bit, and it works really well. And there's no reason to not use it. The only thing is it's completely online, and they do have outages, so it could be an issue if you're sitting down for a session and their website goes down. But it works well, but it just I wanted something offline. So what I eventually found is this program called Emma Personal Wiki. If you Google Emma Personal Wiki, it'll take you right to this, to the website with it. And this is just a great simple program. It's like a bare bones wiki type program. The only thing I wish it had is I wish it had all the different links like in a sidebar, but that's not that big of an issue. So I got home, and then I got this adventure or campaign or whatever. This is like the home page for this campaign. So I'm starting to flesh out the history, and so I want to start making a wiki for it. So you get this program, start writing it. So we'll go history of Dorumtel. And Dorumtel is the name of this island that it's sited on. And the way that I do naming for D&D stuff is I don't use any generators or anything. I just stick consonants and vowels together until they sound like a word. That's all I do. Sometimes I throw in random punctuation marks just for flavor. And in doing that, like at least with this one, I'm kind of inadvertently creating a syntax for my dwarven language, which I'm not going to concentrate. I'm not big on constructed languages, but it is if that's something that gets you going, it's really easy to segue right into that aspect when you're creating an adventure, because like I wanted Dorumtel just sounded cool. So I decided that tel as a suffix meant that the landmass or the thing that is named is an island. So like Dorok Tel, would be Dorok Island, right? And then from there I started adding other... This video isn't about any of that. So anyway, I've got my dwarves on an island. I've got the reason that they're there. Now I've got this crater, but I want them to see it become a crater, like the Native Americans did for Crater Lake. I like that idea. It would be a real foundation for lore and story. So I needed to figure out a reason why the crater was there. But before I could even do that, I had to figure out a reason to get my dwarves underground, right? Because they're refugees. They just landed on the island to survive and try and make a new home for themselves. They're not going to be looking for gold. I need to give them a reason to go underground. So I say they arrived there in the 4th century of the Second Age. When is that? Technically, that's the beginning of time in my world. That's the first mention of time. When did the Second Age start? Well, apparently about 4 centuries before now. How long was the First Age? I really don't know, and I really don't care unless I need to create some lore that ties into that. I'll need to know why an age is an age, or why the First Age ended and why there's now a Second Age. I chose Second Age basically because First Age seemed too primitive, and I like the idea of ages, hearkening to Tolkien, the Third Age, and this and that. It just sounds nice. It sounds whimsical. And so I chose Second Age, and I didn't want them to be too advanced, so I chose 4th century of the Second Age. Why not? Sounds good. There doesn't need to be any logic behind it. It could have been year 0. Maybe they just decided that was the new calendar, and whatever. It doesn't matter. So, got a time, got a place, got a reason they're there. Now I need to get these dwarves underground. So, why would they go underground? They're just subsisting. They're just making simple shelters and eating whatever they can find. Well, what if they don't have wood for shelters? That would cause them to start quarrying stone, right? So I'll make it that the island, circa 4th century, Second Age, didn't have any trees, or it had very sparse trees. That would give them a reason to start quarrying stone and start digging, right? So that's what I went with. That they started out just digging stone to make their houses and walls and stuff like that for protection, and they struck gold or silver or diamonds or something. They found valuable ores and gems in the rock. And since this crater didn't exist, I needed something else to be there instead. I didn't want to do one giant mountain because that would be an enormous mountain. It's fantasy, so I could make, a 100-mile tall mountain, but that's stretching it too much for me. I also didn't want to do an impactor. I didn't want a meteor or something. First of all, that would be a massive event and would wipe out half the world. But also, space things kill my immersion for fantasy. I know space exists and there's stars and there's the moon and there's celestial bodies that people worship, but the fact that it's a meteor is too real for me. So I didn't want to do a meteor or anything like that, or meteorite, I suppose, if it struck the ground. And I didn't want to do a mountain. A volcano, it could work. Generally, that would mean there was a mountain there. And a volcano that big would kill everything around. So I need something else. And I want there to be magical stuff in there, so I'll make I'll just have to think of a magical event that happened and then go from there. So I'll start out, no, not a mountain, we'll start with an Inselberg, which is basically just a big plateau of rock, right? I think Inselberg translates to like rock island, something like that, earth island. I think it's German, I don't know. Anyway, it's just a big plateau. It's like the big red rock in Australia. That's an Inselberg. There's another term for it too, but I pronounce that term even worse than Inselberg, so we'll go with an Inselberg. It's a giant rock plateau, and for flavor we'll add 3 spires on it. And maybe the old order, or the old kingdom, their regalia had images of the 3 spires on the plateau. I just made that part up. I don't have that in there at all. It sounds kind of cool though. Maybe I'll use it. So we're starting dwarves, refugee dwarves, harvesting rock to make buildings, find ore inside a giant Inselberg. Sweet, we're on our way. Okay, so that's the basic first history of the island of Dorumtel. So to get there, I'll just read what I've got so far for that. And I'm not a writer, so don't expect too flowery of language or anything. The history of Dorumtel. The island of Dorumtel was discovered and settled sometime in the 4th century of the Second Age. Little is known of the founders. It's believed the original inhabitants were refugees from the fallen dwarvish kingdom of Dor Kalintz. At the time of discovery, the appearance of the island was drastically different from present day. While there were small stands of trees scattered across the more fertile areas, there were no dense woods to speak of. Most notably, the island's most prominent feature, the great crater of Dorumtel, was absent. In its place stood an enormous Inselberg crowned by 3 rocky spires. Due to the lack of substantial source of wood, the dwarves turned to quarrying stone for their buildings and infrastructure. Primarily focused on subsistence, the original inhabitants quickly discovered the resources that would bring great prosperity to this burgeoning empire. It was discovered that the foundations of Dorumtel were rich with valuable ores and precious gems. Following this discovery, the small village of Takmir began to grow into the prosperous port city it is today. As word spread of the island's riches, some of the finest smiths and craftsmen traveled to Dorumtel to set up shop, cementing the island as a premier location to obtain the best weapons, armor, and jewels. So, that's basically like the ancient history of Dorumtel, right? The only thing I didn't cover is I gave a name to the original settlement, Tekmir, the little village that they set up when they first landed. It became a port city. That's a huge piece of lore. And it doesn't go into great detail because it doesn't need to. People, the average person that an adventurer would run into, or even scholars that they might encounter, wouldn't know any more than that. You know, the early history of maybe there was turmoil, maybe a power struggle. So the history is just lost. It doesn't have to be recorded for all eternity. History is lost every day. So, and that's a huge time saver, isn't it? Instead of having to flesh out every single day of the last 400 years. No, screw that. Vagities. Is that a word? Vagity? Something that is vague? It is now. It is in my world. In Dorumtel, the inhabitants often speak in vagities. So, I've got the history. Now let's make a crater, right? I want this crater to happen. I want it to happen magically, and I want it to leave behind magical residue. How do I do that? Well, we'll borrow another page from Tolkien and say the dwarves delve too deep, right? They went too deep. And when I first had this idea, I was going to say, well, maybe they broke into the Underdark, right? Because I borrow a lot from Forgotten Realms, just because it's easier and it's already made, so why not? So I was going to say they broke into the Underdark, and all sorts of nasty Underdark creatures came out and flushed the mine, and so then they sealed it up, and they had to get some powerful sorcerer to go in and clear them out. I'm like, okay, that could work, but I don't know. I want my players to get to the Underdark at some point, but I don't want to bring them there yet. And it seemed to me like Underdark, like that's an entire ecosystem that exists like below normal terrestrial grounds or people. There's no way to seal off the Underdark, which is what I want to happen, right? I want something bad to happen, and I want it to be sealed off somehow. And Underdark would be kind of difficult to feasibly seal off, since it's just a bunch of tunnels and stuff. And if they keep mining, they'll eventually break back into it, right? So I thought, well, what about a different plane, right? I could do a different plane, and I don't even have to specify a plane, because the dwarves, the scholars that are telling these tales, they don't even know that they breached a plane. They don't know about any planar portals. They just know bad shit came out. They sent in a badass guy to fix it. And he didn't come out. No, he died in there somehow. He caused the explosion, or the implosion, that created the crater. He is the crater creator. I like that. So I don't need to know what planes or how. I just decided they somehow opened an ancient planar portal. That's all I need right now. And that's pretty much all I have right now as far as that event. So they got invaded from beings from other planes. They had to seal up the mines. They're like, oh shit, this is bad news, Haas. We need the mines to survive and whatnot. So they sent word across the Valancian Sea, which is apparently the name of the sea, and looking for somebody strong enough to enter the mines and fix whatever the hell they broke. So they eventually get a reply from a half-elvish sorcerer named Treandriel. Again, just sticking consonants and vowels together, you'll get these words. Do it long enough, it happens. And he arrived in the fall of 582 of the Second Age, because why not? I decided this all happened, the whole invasion thing happened 2 centuries after the founding, just to give them some time to kind of like diversify their populace and get well off and settled, right? 2 centuries, that's pretty good. Then the proverbial shit hits the fan, or the shit comes flying out of the planar portal. So they get this half-elvish dude to go in, and he's like known across the world for how powerful he is. So he just like walks in by himself, and they don't even question that. They're like, yeah, this guy's got it. They seal up the mine behind him, and they don't hear from him for 10 days, because why not? And they start to worry. They're like, oh shit, maybe he didn't make it. Maybe we're gonna have to evacuate. This is bad news. And then on the 10th day, I said, let there be light. No, on the 10th day, the whole island shook, and there were screams and just groans and crazy noises coming out of the Inselberg before like there was a huge ruckus, and the entire Inselberg collapsed into the crater that you know and love today as Dorumtel crater. Yes, I have my crater, finally. It only took me 45 minutes to get there, but I've got my crater. Even though it was drawn there the whole time, but I wanted a reason. I wanted them to witness the the thing happening, so they had like a kind of rich history. So, yes, crater collapses. They don't know why. They don't know what happened. They just know they sent in this like super magical dude to fix stuff, and then like the plateau fell on him. So they wait 10 more days because like for some reason a 10-day is a thing in the D&D world, and I'm not going to mess with that. And they wait another 10-day, and they go in, and there's no more baddies, or maybe there's a few, and they kill them, but that's not really worth history, so they don't write it down, and I'm not going to write it either. They go in, and most of the mine is just destroyed, obviously, but there's more or less no more baddies, but there's no sign of the sorcerer. But they're like, well, it sucks that you're dead or whatever, but thanks, and they start mining again. Because that's what dwarves do. They mine and they mine and they mine. So they are back in the mines and they're doing stuff, but then they discover like all the ores and gems are glowing. They're like, what? This is awesome. And it's like 2 o'clock in the morning right now, so I might get a little funky. This is hella awesome. And they get their glowing ore and gems out of the mine, and they like analyze it and trying to figure out why is it glowing. And it turns out that all the ore and gems in the ground is now imbued with this neutral sort of magical energy. It doesn't do anything on its own, but it makes the material really easy to enchant. Bam. I wanted something special about the ores of this. Like it was already really high grade ore or whatever, but I figure like there's probably lots of places that have really great ore and gems and stuff. I wanted this place to be special. I want it to be magical, but I don't want it to be too magical, you know? Just like magic, like diet magic, like aspartame magic. So it's just like super easy to enchant, which is, I think, a pretty valuable, you know, commodity in the D&D universe, multiverse. So they're like, yes, this rocks, thanks dead elf dude. And they prosper again for another 200 years. And during this time, within the crater, they build a settlement, the royal house. The House of Nar chose to build a royal hamlet of Koldar Narinth. And that's more like naming syntax that I'm going to carry on into this entire world. Koldar meaning like a royal residence, and the suffix nth being what you add to the end of a royal family's name to show like possession, sort of. It's kind of hard to explain. But so Koldar Narinth, the house where the House of Nar resides. Anyway, that's not really important. I decided they built that inside of the... Let's bring up the map again. This place. And you can see when I drew it ruined. So I'm going to have to think of a reason for why that is ruined. And I'm also going to have to think of a reason why there's a lake in here and a forest, and why there's forests. And what the hell this little settlement is here. And this one here, and holy shit, what the hell is that? We'll find out in the next installment of this series, because I am so tired of talking at this point. And hope you enjoyed this. I know it's kind of scatterbrained and stuff. I think it'll get better once I catch the video up to where I am, and we'll actually, you'll watch me making things on the fly. This is just kind of recap and give you an idea of my thought processes and how I'm putting this this world and this campaign together. You'll notice I haven't said anything about any quests. Uh, the PCs are still far off. I mean, there's still 200 years to go before the PCs are going to show up. So I got time to flesh out why Koldar Nurinth is ruined and why there's a lake and what the hell that thing is. So, stay tuned for the next video, and thanks for watching.